I had cleaned hundreds of hotel rooms in my life, but nothing prepared me for the moment that would split my world open like a thin sheet of ice under too much weight. It was a quiet Thursday afternoon on the 30th floor of the Golden Crest, Chicago, the VIP wing where guests requested privacy with the same certainty they requested room service. The suite I was assigned to 3002 belonged to Grant Whitford. Even if someone did not recognize his face, everyone in the hotel knew his name. He was a billionaire in the financial sector, 52 years old, famously private, and the kind of man who made managers straighten their jackets the moment he stepped off an elevator. I entered the suite with my cleaning cart, expecting the usual untouched luxury faint cologne folded newspapers and the curated silence that always seems to accompany great wealth. The curtains were half drawn, letting in a clean stripe of sunlight that stretched across the marble floor like a carefully placed spotlight. My uniform collar scratched against my neck as I began the routine I had memorized by heart. Dust the tables, wipe the counters empty. The bins pretend your real life is not falling apart outside these walls. When I stepped toward the large walnut desk near the window, I noticed a single framed photograph resting beside a sleek laptop and a pen worth more than I earned in a week. The frame was heavy silver engraved with the initials GW. I reached for it to wipe the glass, but the instant my fingers brushed the surface, my breath stilled. The photograph was clearly old, taken in the late 90s with a soft film quality. A young woman stood near a lake sunlight warming the waves behind her. She had red hair pulled back loosely, a shy smile, and eyes that seemed to hold a quiet ache. My heart slammed against my ribs. She did not just resemble my mother. She looked exactly like her, not similar. Not close, identical, same copper-red hair, same slender jawline, same small, almost embarrassed smile, same sadness lingering at the edges of her expression, like she carried a secret that weighed more than her body could hold. My throat tightened. I swallowed hard and leaned closer, unable to stop myself. The woman in the photo wore a thin, silver bracelet engraved with a small pattern. My mother kept one just like it in a small box in her dresser drawer. She never wore it. She never talked about it. She never answered my questions about where it came from. A sharp sting gathered behind my eyes. I whispered before I could stop myself. "Mom!" The word escaped so quietly that even I barely heard it. Just as I lifted the frame to look more closely, the suite door clicked open behind me. I turned sharply. Grant Whitford stood in the entryway, tall, composed, wearing a charcoal suit and the kind of expression that could silence a crowded room. His eyes moved from my face to the frame in my hands, and something in his posture shifted. I should have apologized. I should have set the photo down immediately. But the question rose and spilled out of me without permission, trembling and impossible to swallow back. "Sir, why does this woman look exactly like my mother?" The world seemed to freeze. He stared at me stunned, the color draining from his face as if someone had pulled a plug. His hand lifted slightly, shaking. Truly shaking. The frame slipped from my fingers just as he reached forward. It hit the marble floor with a sharp crack, the glass shattering into bright, jagged pieces that scattered across the sunlight. For several seconds he did not move. He just stared at me, breathing shallowly. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely audible. "What did you just say?" There was something in his tone that made my skin prickle. Fear, grief, disbelief, all woven together. I felt myself pulling back instinctively, suddenly aware of how fragile the moment was, how dangerous it felt to have said anything at all. I repeated myself softer this time, my pulse pounding in my ears. "She looks exactly like my mother." His knees seemed to buckle, and he sank onto the edge of the bed, lowering his head into his hands. It was as if my words had struck him physically. I had never seen a man like him collapse under anything, not even the weight of his own empire. But he collapsed beneath mine. And in that frozen, breathless moment, I felt the world tip off its axis. I did not know why this photograph existed. I did not know why my mother's face lived inside a billionaire's private belongings. But I knew one thing with complete certainty. Nothing in my life would ever be the same after this. Before that afternoon in Grant Whitford's suite, my life followed a rhythm so familiar it felt carved into my bones. I woke each morning before the sun rose, pulled on the same faded housekeeping uniform, and took the first bus from our neighborhood on the south side into the bright, polished world of downtown Chicago. 6 days a week, I stripped beds for strangers, scrubbed mirrors until my reflection blurred, and cleaned bathrooms that cost more per night than my mother and I paid for a month of rent. After my shift at the hotel, I grabbed a quick sandwich, changed into a second uniform, and worked evenings at a laundromat on Halsted Street, the kind of place where the floor always smelled faintly of bleach and desperation. People rarely looked me in the eye there. They were too tired, too overwhelmed, too busy living paycheck to paycheck. I understood them more than they knew. I lived the same way. My mother, Mary Ann Harper, had been sick for years. A chronic lung condition worsened by years of lack of treatment had slowly hollowed her out like dry wood left in the rain. She coughed often, the sharp rattling sound that made me pause whatever I was doing just to listen, just to make sure she was still able to breathe. We owed over $12,000 in medical bills, the kind that came in red envelopes with words like final notice or urgent. Without insurance, her medications cost more than our monthly groceries. Our apartment was small and drafty, a third-floor walk-up with windows that rattled in the wind. In winter, cold air slipped through the walls so sharply it felt like needles brushing the skin. I used towels to block the cracks, but it never helped much. Sometimes, late at night, I would wake to find my mother sitting upright, wrapped in 2 sweaters, struggling for breath while pretending she was fine. She always said the same thing. "Do not worry, sweetheart. I am tougher than I look." But her eyes gave her away. They were tired. And beneath the tiredness was something else, something older and heavier than her illness, a sadness she carried without explanation. She had once been an art student at a university in Michigan, a fact she rarely mentioned unless I asked directly. She painted landscapes, mostly lakes and forests, but she never showed me the original canvases. They were long gone. I grew up surrounded not by her artwork, but by the absence of it. She dropped out abruptly in 1997, the same year she stopped talking about her past. Anytime I asked why she left school, she waved her hand and said she needed to move on. Anytime I asked about my father, she froze. Not stiff, not angry. Just frozen, as if someone had pressed pause on her entire body. Then she would force a faint smile and say the same sentence every time. Some stories do not need to be reopened. It felt like a wall. I was not allowed to cross a locked room inside her heart I would never enter. As a child, I imagined my father as a blurry, heroic figure who had no choice but to stay away. As a teenager, I imagined he was cruel. As an adult, I stopped imagining altogether. Life demanded attention, and fantasies had no place between double shifts and overdue bills. Still, there were moments when I caught a glimpse of something unspoken in my mother. When she looked at old photographs of me as a baby. When she touched the thin silver bracelet she kept hidden in her drawer. When she heard a certain kind of music and her gaze drifted toward the window as if searching for a memory she could not allow herself to revisit. I had a sense, instinctive and persistent, that she had once loved someone deeply and that love had broken in a way she was never able to repair. But she never confirmed it. She only worked, coughed, endured, and loved me fiercely in her quiet way. My own dreams faded over time. I once wanted to study interior design. I loved imagining how spaces could make people feel, but tuition was impossible and my mother needed help. So I put away my plans and built a life around survival. Wake, work, clean, fold, go home. Sit beside my mother until her breathing evened out. Sleep, repeat. I thought I understood hardship. I thought I understood secrets. But everything I believed about my life, about my mother, about the man who had disappeared before I took my first breath, shattered the moment I saw that photograph in Grant Whitford's suite. I did not know then that the story my mother refused to reopen was about to burst into my life, whether either of us was ready or not. Grant Whitford did not speak right away. He stayed seated on the edge of the bed, elbows on his knees, fingers pressed against his forehead as if he were holding back an earthquake from splitting him open. I stood a few feet away, unsure whether to apologize or leave the room or simply pretend this wasn't happening. But his reaction was too raw, too human, too different from the cold, controlled persona everyone in the hotel whispered about. When he finally lifted his head, his eyes were different. Gone was the polished billionaire with impeccable posture and a voice that could silence a boardroom. In his place was a man stripped of whatever held him together. His voice came out hoarse. "Your mother's name. Tell me her full name." The question startled me. I clutched my hands together. Marianne Harper. He swallowed hard as if the name physically hurt. Her birthday. Why does that matter? Please, tell me. I answered him slowly, sensing that something in him was unspooling by the second. February 20th, 1978. He exhaled sharply. Not relief, not horror, but something in between, something too tangled to identify. Where did she live in 1997? I frowned. I was not even born then, but my mother often mentioned a lake town in Michigan. She studied near Lake Ashbury for a year, before she quit school, and left everything. The room seemed to tilt. Grant stood abruptly and walked toward the desk, stepping around the shattered glass without noticing. He gripped the edge of the table hard enough that his knuckles whitened. "Did she ever mention me?" His voice cracked in the middle of the sentence. The question stunned me. "You? Why would she mention you?" He turned slowly. The expression on his face was something I had never seen on a man like him. Hope, fear, guilt, all of it crashing together. Because I knew a Marianne, a very long time ago, and I loved her more than anything. Then she vanished without a word. My mouth went dry. Loved her. Vanished. This was not a casual confession. This was a wound being torn open. I heard myself ask the question before I even processed it. "Are you implying you are my father?" His face crumpled not with certainty, but with torment. "I am not implying anything. I do not know yet. But I need to." I could feel my pulse hammering behind my ribs. The air felt sharp. "You sound insane," I said quietly. "This is a housekeeping shift, not a reunion. You think because my mother looks like a woman you knew 30 years ago that means something. That means everything," he said, almost whispering. "In 1997, I was 24. I met a woman named Marianne near Lake Ashbury, and she changed my entire life. We were together for 6 months. We planned a future. Then one night we had a terrible fight. My father forbid me from seeing her again. He told me she would ruin my life. He treated her like she was beneath us. Beneath me." My stomach twisted. I asked softly, "And what did you do?" He closed his eyes. I did the worst thing I have ever done. I let him dictate my choice. I asked her to give us time. I tried to convince her that I needed space to deal with my father. She thought I was choosing him over her. We said terrible things, things we could not take back. The next morning, she was gone. I searched everywhere. She left the university, left town, no forwarding address, no explanation, nothing. The word fell heavy between us. It hung in the air like dust in a sunbeam. Nothing. My feet felt glued to the floor. I wanted to be angry for my mother, angry for myself. But the man in front of me looked as if this memory had been eating him alive for decades. He pointed at the broken photograph, voice trembling. "That was the last picture we took together. I kept it because I could not let go of her. Not completely." My throat tightened. Grant continued his words tumbling out as though he feared he would lose the courage if he stopped. "When you said the woman in that photo looks exactly like your mother, it felt like the floor disappeared beneath me. Because in all these years I have never met another woman who looked even remotely like her. And then you walked into this room, and you said those words." And suddenly I was 24 again and realizing that the biggest mistake of my life might have come back to confront me. I pressed my back against the wall, needing something solid behind me. "This is too much. You do not know anything for certain." He nodded, but his eyes stayed locked on mine, full of something desperate and unguarded. "I know that your mother ran away in 1997. I know she never told me why. And I know that if she had been pregnant, she might have believed I was too weak to choose her over my father." The room spun. Pregnant. The word did not come out of his mouth, but it lived in the silence between us. I forced myself to breathe. This cannot be real. He spoke softly, painfully. I need to know the truth. If your mother is my Marianne, then I abandoned the only family I ever had. I have to make it right. I had no words, only the overwhelming sense that the life I thought I understood was suddenly shaking itself apart. I stared at him, unable to blink, unable to breathe. My mind was running in circles so fast it felt like I might collapse under the weight of it. Finally, the words tore out of me sharper than I intended and fueled by something hot and rising inside my chest. Are you implying you are my father? His face tightened as if the question physically struck him. No, I am not implying anything. I am trying to understand what is happening. I am trying to know the truth. I took a step back, my palms sweating. The truth. The truth is that you are a billionaire having some kind of breakdown in front of a housekeeper because a random photo reminded me of my mother. You do not know her. You do not know me. You do not know anything. His jaw clenched, but his voice stayed low, almost pleading. I know enough to recognize her face. I know enough to feel something I have not let myself feel in 25 years. And I know that if your mother is my Marianne, then I abandoned her when she needed me most. I laughed, but the sound came out hollow and sharp. Oh, so you suddenly care now. That is convenient. That is what men like you do right. Break something. Walk away and then come back decades later trying to dust off the ruins like it makes you noble. He flinched. Really flinched. I am not trying to make myself noble. I am trying to make myself accountable. I crossed my arms tightly across my chest. Why? Why now? Why? Because you saw a photo. Because your conscience finally woke up in a luxury suite. His shoulders sagged, but he did not back away. If your mother is the woman I loved, then I walked away from the only real happiness I ever had. I need to know whether that mistake cost more than I ever realized. My heartbeat thudded painfully. This entire conversation felt like a rope tightening around my ribs. You think you can just decide that? You think you can march into my life with your money and your regrets and rewrite history? His voice rose for the first time, but it was not anger that colored it. It was desperation. I do not want to rewrite anything. I want the truth. That is all. I shook my head. You are trying to manipulate me. You are trying to use your wealth to force a connection that may not exist. Rich men always assume the world bends around their regrets. That line struck him harder than anything else I had said. He dropped his gaze to the floor before lifting it again, eyes heavy with something that almost looked like shame. I cannot force you to believe me. I know how this sounds. I know I have no right to ask anything of you. But if your mother is my Marianne, then I left her alone at a time when she needed me. And if she was pregnant, I left a child without a father. Even hearing the word in the air made my skin prickle. I stepped back again, needing space, needing air. You are assuming a lot. Too much. He shook his head slowly. I am not assuming anything. I am terrified that I might be right. I stared at him, anger and fear and disbelief swirling together in a way that made my throat feel tight and raw. You do not get to be terrified. You do not get to have emotions about this. Whatever happened back then, whatever choices you made, those were yours. My mother has worked herself sick. I have been juggling 2 jobs since I was old enough to hold a mop. Do you know what that is like? Do you know what medical debt feels like when it crushes you month after month? You do not get to waltz in now and act devastated. His eyes filled not with tears, but with a kind of brokenness I had not expected to see. You are right. I have no right to anything. But if I hurt your mother, if I helped destroy her life, then I need to face it. I need to make it right, even if it is too late for her to forgive me. I felt something twist painfully in my chest. Anger, yes, but also confusion. Pity, something dangerously close to empathy. I hated that. I wanted to stay furious. I wanted to reject him completely, but the sincerity in his expression made it impossible to ignore him entirely. I took a slow breath. Even if your story were true, even if my mother were the woman in that photo, she owes you nothing. And I owe you even less. He nodded. I understand. I do. But please, let me speak to her. Let me look her in the eyes and know for certain whether the greatest regret of my life is standing right in front of me. I hesitated, a long, painful hesitation, because part of me wanted to say no, to protect my mother, to protect myself. But another part of me, the part that had lived my entire life with unanswered questions, whispered that this could be the moment everything changes. I shook my head again, but softer this time. I am not promising anything. I am not letting you walk into her life and tear open wounds I have spent years trying to keep closed. But I could hear my own breath tremble as I finished. I will think about it. Out. His expression broke open with relief. Thank you, he whispered. I did not thank him back. I simply turned, grabbed my cleaning cart, and walked out of the suite with my heart pounding so loudly I could barely hear myself think. I did not sleep that night. I lay awake listening to the uneven rhythm of my mother's breathing through the thin wall that separated our rooms, replaying every expression on Grant Whitford's face, every tremble in his voice, every impossible thing he had said. By morning, exhaustion felt like a second skin. At the hotel, I moved through my shift like a shadow, barely aware of the rooms I cleaned or the voices around me. My manager pulled me aside twice to ask if I was sick. I told her I was fine. I was not. During my lunch break, I stepped outside into the cold March wind and finally made a decision. I texted Grant's temporary hotel number. Meet me by the staff entrance at 4. No promises. His reply came seconds later, as if he had been watching the phone willing it to light up. Thank you. I will be there. I did not answer. When 4 o'clock came, I stepped out the back door of the hotel, the one used by employees heading to the bus stop. Grant was already there, impossible to miss in his long black coat and polished shoes. But he was not alone. A driver stood beside a dark sedan, and a security guard kept a polite distance. I stiffened. He noticed immediately. They stay outside, he said. I promise. I nodded once and walked toward the car. The city looked grayer than usual as we drove south toward my neighborhood. Glass towers faded into brick buildings, the clean sidewalks turned cracked and worn, and the bright storefronts grew sparser with every mile. Grant watched everything through the window, his expression tight. When we passed a corner store with boarded windows, he spoke quietly. You live here. The question was simple, but the weight behind it made my stomach tense. Yes. He nodded once more to himself, then to me, as if absorbing the consequences of a history he had never known he left behind. The car pulled up in front of our building, a narrow 3-story structure with peeling paint and a broken buzzer. I stepped out first. The wind smelled like fried food from the takeout place down the block. Grant followed, looking completely out of place, like someone had cut him from a magazine ad and pasted him against a backdrop he did not belong in. This is where she lives. He said it quietly, almost reverently. I felt irritation spark in me. Do not say it like it is tragic. It is just life. He nodded, chastened. I led him up the stairs, my heart pounding harder with each step. On the second-floor landing, Mrs. Thompson poked her head out of her door, eyeing Grant with open suspicion. Everything all right, Lila? Yes, ma'am, just visiting. She eyed us another moment before disappearing. Grant whispered, People care about you here. I ignored that. At our door, my hands shook as I unlocked it. I stepped inside first. Mom, I am home. Her voice floated from the small living room. In here, sweetheart. I walked in. She was sitting on the sagging couch wrapped in a knitted blanket, her cheeks pale, but her eyes alert. When she saw me, she smiled. When she saw the man behind me, the smile vanished. Her hand flew to her mouth. No. No! She stood abruptly, wobbling slightly. No, this cannot. Grant stopped in the doorway like he had hit an invisible wall. His breath caught. Marianne. The name left his throat like a prayer he had been holding for decades. My mother froze. Her knees buckled and she gripped the arm of the couch to steady herself. Grant stepped forward instinctively. She flinched. Do not come any closer. Please. His voice broke. It is really you. She covered her face with both hands, shoulders trembling. I cannot believe you are here. I cannot. This is not happening. He took a step back as if giving her space might soften the shock. I searched for you. I did not stop for months. You disappeared. Her voice cracked. You let me go. You let your father tear us apart. You let me walk away." I stood between them, feeling the weight of two people's history crashing into the present. My mother looked at me, panic rising in her eyes. "Why did you bring him here? How do you even know him?" I swallowed hard. "He had a photo of you, from before." Her face drained of color. The photo. God, I should have burned it. Grant stepped forward again, hesitantly. "Marianne, I never stopped thinking about you, and when she told me her mother's name when she said you had lived near Lake Ashbury, I knew. I knew it had to be you." My mother let out a shaky, broken laugh. "You knew nothing. You knew what you wanted to believe." His shoulders sagged. "Then tell me the truth. Please. Tell me why you left without a word. Tell me why you erased yourself from my life." She stared at him, her jaw trembling. "Because I found out I was pregnant, and I knew you would not choose us." The words punched the air out of the room. I felt my knees weaken. Pregnant. My heart raced. "Mom!" She kept her eyes locked on him. "Your father said I would ruin your future." You did not argue. You hesitated. That was enough for me. I left because I refused to let our child grow up unwanted. Grant's face collapsed. "I had no idea. You never told me." She wiped a tear with the back of her hand. "I did not trust you. And maybe I was wrong. Maybe I was right. But I made the choice I thought would protect her. Him. Me. Everything." I whispered. "You kept him from me." She turned toward me, eyes full of sorrow. "I kept his world from swallowing you whole." Grant took a slow step toward me, his voice breaking. "Lila, if you are my daughter, then I abandoned you without knowing you existed." I thought I had already seen him at his lowest, but this was different. This was a man unraveling, and I knew then that whatever happened next, none of our lives would ever return to what they were before this door opened. The room felt too small to contain the three of us, our histories, and all the unspoken things that had lived in silence for more than 2 decades. I stood near the window, gripping the peeling paint on the sill just to steady myself. My mother lowered herself slowly onto the couch, both hands shaking. Grant remained standing, his eyes fixed on her, as if he were afraid she might disappear again. For a moment, no one spoke. Then he exhaled a long, trembling breath. "Tell me everything, Marianne. Please." My mother looked at me first, her eyes asking for permission she had never asked before. I gave a small nod. She turned back to him, her voice thin but steady. "You want to know the truth. Fine. You remember the fight." He nodded immediately. "I remember every word. You said I was choosing my father over you. You said I was weak." "You were." Her voice cracked. "You were terrified of losing his approval. That night you made me feel like loving me was an inconvenience you could no longer afford." He pressed a hand to his chest as if the memory itself still hurt. "I was 24. I was stupid. I thought I could fix things later. I thought you would not really leave. You did not come after me. You waited too long. I waited for you for days, and when you did not come, something inside me closed." She paused, trying to catch her breath. "And then I found out I was pregnant." I gripped the window frame harder, the blood rushing in my ears. My mother kept speaking, her voice thinning. "I wanted to tell you. I swear I did. But then your father showed up. He came to my apartment. He told me I was a burden. He told me I would destroy your future. He told me you already regretted being with me." Grant flinched as if struck. "He came to you." He looked sick, furious in a way I had never seen. "Yes. He offered me money to disappear. Not much, just enough to cover a bus ticket and a few months of rent somewhere far away." My stomach twisted. "What did you do?" She closed her eyes. "I took the money." Grant staggered back as if the air had been knocked out of him. "You took it. Why?" "Because I believed him. I believed he was speaking for you. I believed you did not want a life with me, and you certainly did not want a child." He dragged a hand across his face. "I had no idea. I swear to you my father told me you wanted nothing to do with me." My mother gave a bitter laugh. "That man was a master of manipulation. He got what he wanted. He always did. He broke both of us. I felt heat rising in my throat. So you ran, you left school, you left him, you left everything. She nodded. I bought a bus ticket the next week. I did not leave a note because I was too angry and too hurt, and too scared you would convince me to come back. Grant sank onto the armchair across from her. His voice was barely audible. I would have begged you to stay. She shook her head. I did not trust that. I thought my leaving would free you. Instead, it hardened me. I survived Lila. I worked 3 jobs. I kept us going, but I carried that choice every day, and I punished him in my mind every night. The words hit me like a wave. So you admit you punished him. And me. She froze, tears filling her eyes. Yes, I punished both of you, and I am so sorry. I did what I thought would protect us, but I see now that I was protecting myself from rejection. I was afraid he would choose his father again. Grant leaned forward, elbows on knees. Marianne, I know the harm I caused you. I know I broke you. I know I made you feel alone. But I swear, if I had known you were pregnant, I would have fought the world for you. She gave him a long, tired look. You say that now with billions in your bank account and a lifetime of regrets behind you. But back then, you were not that man. You were a boy who bowed to power. His voice cracked. I know, and I am ashamed of it. The room fell into another stretch of silence. This one heavier, denser. My heart was pounding. The realization that the two of them had been helplessly tangled in the past made my stomach twist with grief. But another realization hit even harder. All these years, I believed life simply happened the way it did. I never questioned why I had no father. I never imagined two people loved each other so deeply that they hurt each other in ways that reshaped entire lives. I stepped forward finally. Mom, why did you never tell me? Why did you let me believe he abandoned us? Her chin trembled, because I did not want you to hope for something that might hurt you, and because every time I looked at you, I saw him. I saw what we lost. I saw what could have been, and I was ashamed. Not of you, never of you, but of the way I ran. My anger softened slowly, like ice melting under a hesitant sun. I looked at Grant next. And you. His eyes lifted to mine. I do not expect forgiveness. I do not expect a relationship. I only want the chance to do something good, to help your mother, to support you. Not as charity, but because I failed both of you before I even knew you existed. My voice came out steady. If you want to fight for us now, then fight with presence, not money. He nodded instantly. Anything. Tell me what you need. I took a breath. Mom needs treatment. Real treatment. Her breathing is getting worse. She cannot keep living like this. Grant straightened. I will cover all her medical expenses. Every appointment, every test, every medication, and anything else she needs. My mother shook her head immediately. No, I am not taking your money. It is not money, he said softly. It is responsibility, and it is 25 years overdue. She looked away, struggling. I cannot let you rescue me. You already rescued us once by raising our daughter alone. Let me help now. Let me do the one thing I should have done from the beginning. I stepped closer to her, placing a hand on her shoulder. Mom, let him. Not for him. For you. For us. Her resistance faltered. Her breathing hitched, and then she nodded slowly, tears slipping down her cheeks. Just this. Nothing else. He exhaled shakily. Just this. For now. I looked between them, the past still raw and painful, but finally spoken aloud. Maybe broken things could not be made perfect again, but they could be acknowledged, faced, mended in new shapes. I whispered, what happens next? Grant answered first. Whatever you choose, whatever both of you need, I am here. For the first time, I believed him. 6 months passed not quietly but steadily, like the slow turning of a wheel finally moving in the right direction. Our lives did not transform overnight, but they shifted in ways I felt deep in my bones. My mother's health came first. Grant arranged her appointments at a pulmonary clinic on the north side, a place so pristine it felt like another world entirely. For the first time in years, her treatment did not depend on coupons, charity programs, or late-night Googling for cheaper alternatives. She had real doctors, real medications, real care. And little by little she came back to herself. The coughing spells grew less violent. Her cheeks gained color. Her laughter returned soft at first, then brighter. She still worked part-time at the laundromat, but only the gentle morning shift, and only because she insisted she needed the movement. The truth was more sentimental. She liked feeling useful. Meanwhile, I began school again. I enrolled in a 2-year interior design program at a community college across town. Walking into a classroom as a student, instead of someone wiping down tables, felt like stepping into another version of my life, one I never believed I would reach. I sketched until my pencils dulled, learned the names of design eras, studied spatial flow, and discovered that rooms could tell stories just like people. And Grant kept his promise. He never missed a payment, never intruded, never pushed. If anything, he held himself back so much that I sometimes wondered if he feared breaking whatever fragile trust we were building. We started meeting once a week, always in public places. A park bench near the lake, a quiet coffee shop where the barista eventually learned our orders, the rooftop garden at the hospital while my mother had her checkups. Our conversations were awkward at first, stitched together with pauses and too formal politeness. He asked about school. I asked about work. He told me about his favorite architects. I told him about the color palettes that made me feel calm. But slowly, something softened. Sometimes he brought old stories of my mother from before I existed. Stories I had never heard because she had buried them so deeply. Stories where she was vibrant, adventurous, full of life. Sometimes I caught him watching me with an expression that made my chest ache. A mixture of pride and grief and wonder. One afternoon in late September, I was sitting with my sketchbook open on the park grass, drawing a sunlit living room from a magazine. Grant stood behind me for a long time without speaking. When he finally did, his voice was low, almost reverent. "You have your mother's hands." I glanced back at him, unsure how to respond. He pointed gently at the way my fingers curved around the pencil, the way my wrist moved as I shaded the corner of a sofa. "She used to sketch just like that." I felt heat rise in my cheeks. I had never known that. I turned back to my paper. "Do I have anything of yours?" The question left my mouth before I realized what I was saying. He did not answer at first. When he finally spoke, the words were breathless. "More than you know." We did not talk about calling him Dad. The word hovered somewhere between us, too heavy and too fragile to touch. But the distance was shrinking, and he tried. Constantly. That mattered more than anything. By early October, my mother could walk up the apartment stairs without stopping halfway. She teased me again. She hummed when she cooked. She did not look like a woman fading anymore. She looked like someone returning, and I knew we had reached a new phase of our lives when she said one evening over dinner, "Maybe you should invite him over sometime." I nearly dropped my fork. "Seriously." She smiled, tired but warm. "Seriously. He is trying, and he clearly loves you." I did not argue, because she was right. The past still lingered like a bruise, but it no longer dictated every step. We were moving forward. Not as a perfect family, but as 3 flawed people learning how to rebuild something fragile together. And for the first time in my life, I felt the quiet, unfamiliar hum of hope. A full year passed, and though the world around us looked the same in so many ways, everything inside our small family had shifted. My mother's health stabilized to a level none of us dared imagine before. She still had bad days, but they were infrequent, manageable, softened by professional care instead of fear. Her doctor used the word stable one morning, and she nearly cried from relief. I nearly did too. My design program was nearly complete. I was set to graduate in the spring, something I once believed belonged to other people with lighter lives and easier paths. But there I was, with a portfolio full of sketches, mood boards, and small residential redesigns that my instructors praised warmly. The transformations around me felt surreal, but the deepest change came from the quiet, steady presence of Grant. He never pushed, never claimed a title, never asked for more than we could give. He simply showed up, every week, every appointment, every milestone. Slowly, the space between us shifted from unfamiliar to comfortable, from careful to warm. And then came the day he invited us to a small conference room at his company headquarters. It was not the intimidating skyscraper with glass walls I imagined. It was a modest building he preferred to use for quieter projects. When we arrived, he greeted us with an expression more nervous than I had ever seen on him. "Thank you both for coming. I want to show you something." He led us into a room with a single long table. At the center sat a portfolio folder with our last name printed on the cover. Not his last name alone. Ours, the Harper Whitford Foundation. My mother gasped softly. I stared at the folder, uncertain, honored, overwhelmed. He opened it and slid the documents toward us. I wanted to create something that reflects all three of our lives. Something good, something lasting, something none of us ever had but desperately needed. A program for families without insurance. Scholarships for students who had to stop school to take care of someone they loved. Grants for single mothers starting over. Support for people who fall through the cracks because no one is looking. My heart tightened. Mom brought a trembling hand to her chest. "Grant, this is too much." He shook his head. "No. This is exactly what I should have done from the beginning. It is not a gift. It is a responsibility I am finally choosing to bear with my eyes open. And I want the two of you involved however you choose. You do not owe me anything, but I owe both of you a lifetime of effort." My mother looked at him with eyes full of something I had not seen directed at him before. Not anger, not sadness, a kind of reluctant forgiveness beginning to form at the edges. We spent the rest of the meeting discussing details he had already thought through funding partnerships community outreach board members. He asked for my input constantly, especially about program design and accessibility. It was the first time someone with his level of influence looked at me as if my thoughts mattered, as if I had something valuable to offer. When the meeting ended, he walked us to the elevator. As the doors closed, he whispered, "Thank you for letting me earn my place." The foundation launched 8 months later. The opening ceremony was held in a renovated community center on the south side, the same neighborhood where I grew up. Volunteers bustled inside, families gathered, reporters lingered near the back. There were rows of folding chairs, an improvised stage, and a banner stretched across the room. The Harper Whitford Foundation, offering care opportunity and second chances. When it was time for the speeches, I stepped onto the stage. The microphone trembled slightly in my hand. I looked out at the crowd, neighbors, friends, hospital staff, strangers, and in the front row, my mother and Grant sitting side by side. A year ago, all three of us were drowning in separate silences. Today, we shared a room filled with possibility. I began speaking. Forgiveness is not a moment. It is a road, a long one. Sometimes painful, sometimes heavy, sometimes filled with questions no one knows how to answer. But it is also a road where people can meet in the middle if they are willing to try. I told them about my childhood, about my mother's strength, about the weight of medical bills, about hope buried under exhaustion. I told them how secrets can shape lives, how love can fracture, and how healing can begin even after decades of absence. And I told them that this foundation was born not from perfection, but from effort, accountability, and the courage to face the past without hiding from it. As I spoke, I saw my mother wipe a tear. I saw Grant's shoulders shake slightly. When I finished, the room erupted into applause. My mother rose slowly from her seat and walked toward the stage. Her steps were careful but steady. She took my hand and squeezed it before turning to Grant. For the first time, she extended her other hand toward him. He accepted it, his face filled with quiet disbelief. And then, in a moment I will carry with me forever, she pulled both of us into a gentle, trembling embrace. The applause grew louder, reporters lifted cameras, volunteers cried, and I felt something inside me shift into place, a piece of my life that had been missing for so long finally clicking into its rightful corner. Later, when the crowd thinned and the sun dipped low through the center's windows, Grant walked beside me near the stage. His voice was low. "I know I cannot change the past. I know I do not deserve easy forgiveness. but standing here today with both of you feels like a second chance I never thought I would deserve. I looked up at him. You are earning it, one step at a time. His eyes softened. And you are letting me. We stood there for a moment, the noise of the celebration fading into a warm hum behind us. For the first time in my life, I was not missing a father. I was finally finding one. Sometimes life does not break us all at once. It breaks us quietly, slowly across the years through the choices we make and the choices we avoid. It breaks us through silence, through fear, through the moments when we are too young to understand what love requires or too wounded to believe that healing is possible. And yet stories like this one remind us of something powerful, something many of us forget as we grow older, that it is never too late for the truth to surface, never too late for hearts to reopen, and never too late for a family to rebuild itself from the ashes of regret and forgiveness. When you watched this journey unfold, you did not just witness the reunion of three people. You saw the truth of what can happen when someone finally finds the courage to face the pain they caused. You saw what it looks like when a woman carries her child through life with nothing but grit and love. And you saw what can happen when a daughter chooses to step into the unknown not for comfort, but for clarity. Many of us carry wounds we never speak aloud. Maybe you grew up with a parent who disappeared. Or perhaps you were the parent who left because you thought you were doing the right thing. Maybe you loved someone long ago and the timing was wrong, or fear won, or pride stood in the way. Life has a way of burying these stories deep inside us. But buried does not mean gone. Buried does not mean finished. What this family discovered is something I hope you carry with you long after this video ends, that healing begins the moment we stop running. Healing begins the moment we look back, not to reopen the wound, but to understand it. Healing begins when we choose honesty instead of silence, presence instead of avoidance, and compassion instead of blame. And perhaps the most important lesson of all forgiveness is not a single moment. It is a road, a long one, a brave one, a road that asks us to walk forward even when the past feels heavy on our shoulders. But it is a road worth taking because on the other side of forgiveness is freedom. Not the kind of freedom that ignores the past, but the kind that finally makes peace with it. If this story touched something in you, if it reminded you of someone you lost or someone you still miss, maybe this is your sign. Reach out to the person you have been thinking about. Say the words you have been holding back. Ask the questions you were once too afraid to ask. Or let someone finally love you with the consistency you always deserved. And if your story is different, if you have no one to reach out to remember this, you still get to choose how your story continues. You still get to choose healing. You still get to choose hope. I believe this story found you today for a reason. Maybe to remind you that broken things can be mended. Maybe to remind you that you matter more than you think. Maybe to remind you that second chances are real and that you deserve one too. If this message speaks to you, share your thoughts in the comments. Your voice might be the very thing someone else needs to hear today. Thank you for watching, and if you want more stories that heal, inspire, and stay with you long after the screen goes dark, make sure you subscribe. Your journey matters, your heart matters, and your story is far from over.